Dust trembled as alarms wailed, and Riven realized the cage around him was shrinking, like the outpost wanted to crush the last breath from his chest. He could hear whispers under the metal, as if something ancient was humming his name. Lyra stepped in, her voice steady, even while fear twisted the air, and Riven wondered why a human would face a creature bred to destroy her world. Who had written a war into their blood? Who decided mercy was a crime? She stared at him, seeing more than the chains, and it shook him harder than any weapon. As the lights flickered, he felt a pull he wasn't built to feel, a question he wasn't meant to ask. If he was shaped to obey, why did her presence feel like freedom? And if she broke her laws for him? What would that make them both when the truth finally rose? Lyra walked out of the cell with her pulse still racing, as if something inside her had shifted in the moment she met his eyes. The hall felt too bright, too clean, compared to the storm in her head. She replayed every detail. The tremor in his breath, the unspoken plea in the way he steadied himself when she stepped close. She told herself it was duty, nothing more, yet the memory refused to settle. Riven wasn't a monster carved from their enemy myths. He was something wounded, something questioning. She wondered who he might have been without chains, and why her presence seemed to shake him. Rules echoed through her mind like warnings, but none of them could quiet the strange pull rising between their worlds. Riven paced the limits of his cage, feeling the imprint of her presence long after she'd gone. He should have rejected the contact, but instead the memory steadied him. The whispers beneath the metal grew louder, as if reacting to her touch, and he sensed an old truth stirring deep within the outpost walls. He tried to rebuild his inner armor, the conditioning that once anchored him, yet cracks spread through it with every breath. Her courage had shaken something he was never meant to feel. He wondered why her voice still echoed in his mind, and what part of him feared losing that sound. Lyra argued with Vera, insisting the prisoner was more than their records showed, but her mentor dismissed it as naivety. Their words clashed like metal on stone, each sentence pressing against Lyra's need to understand what she had felt. She struggled to explain a force she could barely name, a spark that carried both danger and clarity. Vera warned her that attachment blurs judgment, that empathy toward the enemy leads only to ruin. Lyra kept silent about the tremor that passed through Riven when she stepped closer. She feared it meant more than either of them were ready to face. Night settled over the outpost, bringing shadows long enough to carry doubts. Lyra stood outside the cell block, torn between reason and instinct. Riven watched her from within, sensing her hesitation like a shift in pressure. Their eyes met through layers of glass and protocol, yet the moment felt unshielded. She wondered why she kept returning, and he wondered why her presence eased the war inside him. The outpost machines hummed, reading energies neither of them understood. Something ancient stirred beneath the floor, as if waiting for a choice neither had made yet. Lyra returned to the archives with a knot in her chest, chasing the strange rhythm that had echoed through her ever since touching the prisoner. Files blinked to life, each one insisting the same story. His kind were born in blood and built for conquest. Yet her instincts whispered another truth, something softer than fear and sharper than logic. She scrolled through battle reports, noticing gaps where details should have been clear, as if someone had swept a hand across history and erased the parts that didn't fit the legend. Riven's voice lingered in her mind, not words but the quiet weight of a being who had never been given a chance to be more than a weapon. She wondered who had shaped the narrative that kept their worlds apart, and what she was risking by digging into secrets buried for generations. Riven lay against the cold cell wall, trying to rebuild the silence inside him, but the choir's distant pressure pulsed like a wound. Their psychic grip had always been absolute, yet now it flickered each time he remembered Lyra's calm voice cutting through fear. He felt the pull again, something awakening behind his ribs, something he had no training for. The outpost hum vibrated with hidden patterns, and he sensed lies threaded through every surface, old and heavy, He tried to hold on to the identity the choir had carved into him, but questions crept through the cracks. If the war was truth, why did it feel hollow? If humans were his enemies, why had her touch steadied him? And if loyalty defined him, why was it fading like smoke? Lyra confronted Cade in the supply wing, demanding to know why parts of the war archives were sealed behind codes older than their colony. Cade laughed softly, a sound that didn't match the worry in his eyes, and warned her that truths buried this deep were meant to keep entire worlds in line. She sensed he knew more than he dared admit, something that tied humans and aliens together in ways no law allowed them to imagine. His warning stirred her determination instead of silencing it. She realized every barrier she hit only sharpened the need to confront what lay beneath their shared past. If history had been rewritten, she had to know by whom, and why Revan seemed connected to the parts nobody wanted touched. The choir reached into Revan's mind with sudden force, pulling him into a haze of commands and memories shaped to keep him obedient. But something inside him resisted, a warmth that wasn't part of his engineered design. He saw flashes of Lyra's eyes, the steady courage she carried, and the pressure of the choir faltered as if her memory disrupted their grip. He tried to hide the shift, but they sensed the fracture and tightened their hold, flooding him with images meant to remind him of his purpose. Yet, even through pain, he felt a new question rise. If his identity could bend, had it ever been real? The choir recoiled from the doubt, and for the first time, he felt their fear. Lyra reviewed the encrypted files she'd stolen from Cade's terminal, feeling her breath catch as fragmented images revealed alien DNA patterns too close to human to dismiss. The resonance she felt around Revan made a strange kind of sense now, as if their connection wasn't an accident but a clue hidden in their shared biology. She realized the war's foundations might be built on a lie so big it shaped generations. Every instinct urged her to return to Revan, to warn him, to understand what bound their worlds together before the truth slipped through her fingers. Outside the window, the stars looked sharper than ever, like they were waiting for her to choose a side. Cade led Lyra through the maintenance tunnels, his voice low as he explained that the files she found were only fragments of a truth, erased long before either of their worlds learned to hate each other. The air smelled of dust and old wiring, and each echo felt like a warning pushing them back. But Lyra pressed forward, driven by the memory of Revan's trembling breath and the way the outpost hum had shifted around him. Cade revealed that ancient tech lay beneath the colony, tech that responded not to species but to a shared lineage both sides had forgotten. Lyra felt her pulse sync with the rhythm of the glowing pipes, and she wondered if Revan felt the same pull in his cell. If their worlds were once one who had torn them apart, and why hide it so fiercely? Revan woke to vibrations under the floor, a low thrumming that matched the strange warmth rising beneath his ribs. He pressed his palm to the cold metal, feeling something ancient respond to him, something older than the choir's commands. Images flickered behind his eyes, stars folding into spirals, hands reaching across species lines, a bond meant to unite instead of divide. For a moment, he felt weightless, freed from the chains of purpose, but then pain struck as the choir tried to sever the connection. He gritted his teeth, fighting their grip as the hum beneath the outpost deepened. He realized Lyra was connected to this awakening, and he feared what the truth would cost her in a world built on laws she had already begun to break. Lyra and Cade discovered a sealed door carved with symbols that looked half human, half alien, the shapes bending in ways that made her pulse race with recognition. Cade admitted he had once stumbled on references to a lost ancestor race, but every record had been scrubbed by both factions. As Lyra traced the symbols, they glowed softly, responding to her touch. She felt a strange tug inside her chest, the same pull she felt when standing near Revan. Cade stepped back, whispering that the outpost shouldn't be reacting to a human alone. Fear mixed with wonder as Lyra realized she wasn't awakening this technology by herself. Something in Revan was answering her, even from a distance. The choir struck again, this time with cold efficiency, thrusting images of fire and shattered worlds into Revan's mind to force him back into obedience. But layered beneath the illusions was the faint echo of Lyra's voice calling him toward truth instead of fear. He clenched his teeth and pushed against the psychic storm, feeling parts of his conditioning break like brittle glass. The choir sensed the rebellion and lashed out harder, but each attack felt weaker than the last. Something ancient was interfering, a force older than the choir's control. Riven realized he wasn't losing himself. He was shedding a version of himself they had sculpted for their own purpose, and that scared them more than anything. Lyra rushed back toward the cell block, driven by a dread she couldn't explain. The outpost lights flickered in sync with the ancient hum rising from below, each pulse stronger than the last. She reached the viewing window and saw Revan standing unsteadily, breathing hard, his eyes reflecting a glow she had never seen before. The moment their gazes met, the hum surged, vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat shared between them. She felt the truth settle into place. Their connection was not chance. It was a thread, woven long before they were born. A link both worlds had been taught to fear. As the outpost systems strained under the growing energy, Lyra realized the lie keeping their species apart was about to break open. The outpost trembled as Lyra raced through the corridors, alarms flaring in frantic pulses that matched the rhythm hammering in her chest. She knew the execution order was minutes away, but every step felt guided by something deeper than fear. The ancient hum rising from below grew louder, as if calling both her and Revan toward a truth no law could contain. When she burst into the detention wing, guards lay unconscious, felled by a burst of energy she sensed wasn't entirely his doing. Revan stood inside the cell, eyes glowing with a mix of pain and awakening, and she felt the universe tilt. She knew crossing that threshold would brand her a traitor, yet she couldn't turn back. Some choices weren't made by logic, but by the heart's quiet certainty, the kind that rewrites everything it touches. Riven felt his knees weaken when Lyra approached, her presence cutting through the chaos like a single clear breath. He warned her to leave, to save herself before the choir reclaimed control of him, but she stepped closer instead, ignoring the warnings that shaped her entire life. The hum beneath the floor intensified, responding to their proximity with a rising warmth that made his voice falter. He could feel the old commands cracking, the conditioning peeling away in trembling fragments. She reached for the panel, her hands steady even as fear pressed against her ribs. In that moment he understood. She wasn't breaking protocol, she was breaking fate, and he no longer had the strength to pretend he didn't want her to. The door slid open with a slow, metallic groan, and Lyra stepped into the cell, feeling the air change as their energies collided. Riven tried to warn her again, but the words dissolved when she placed her hand on his chest. A tremor ran through him, not of fear but release, as if her touch unlocked a part of him he had never been allowed to keep. She whispered that the lies were unraveling, that their worlds were bound by something older than war, and he felt truth resonate through his bones. The ancient hum climbed higher, vibrating through the walls in a rhythmic wave that made the lights flicker like breathing stars. He realized the universe wasn't punishing their connection, it was awakening because of it. Vera stormed into the detention wing just as the resonance peaked, her voice slicing through the charged air as she ordered Lyra to step away. Lyra felt the weight of every law she had ever obeyed crashing down on her, but she didn't move. Riven's breathing hitched as the choir tried to seize control again, pushing pain through his mind with brutal force. He staggered, and Lyra caught him, shielding him with her body even as Vera shouted that she was betraying her own people. The ancient hum surged like a heartbeat choosing sides, and Lyra realized she was no longer standing between worlds. She was standing against them both. Some truths demanded defiance, and some bonds demanded sacrifice. The moment stretched as Lyra lifted Revan's face, seeing the pain tearing through him. She whispered that he wasn't alone, and something inside him broke free, shaking the cell with a pulse of blue light. She leaned in without hesitation, their lips meeting in a kiss meant for neither of their worlds. The resonance exploded outward, cracking the walls and silencing every alarm in the outpost. The choir's grip shattered in an instant, their distant voices recoiling as Revan's chains dissolved like dust. For a heartbeat, the universe felt still, as if bearing witness to a choice rewritten in real time. Lyra knew there was no return from this moment, but in Revan's steadied breath, she felt the truth she had been searching for. Connection could break laws, but it could also build something stronger. Night swallowed the outpost as Lyra guided Revan through collapsing corridors, the air still trembling from the shockwave their kiss had unleashed. Dust drifted like falling stars, and each flicker of broken lights reminded them how close the colony was to tearing apart. Revan leaned on her only slightly, yet she felt the strength inside him shifting, rising, reshaping itself now that the choir's grip had shattered. Outside, the desert stretched wide and silent, marked by ruins older than any map dared show. She sensed the Sentinel's presence in the distance, a faint pull threading through her thoughts, like a whisper, waiting to be answered. Raven paused to steady himself, eyes glowing with a quiet resolve she had never seen before. They both knew the world behind them was gone, and whatever waited ahead would change more than just their fates. The desert wind hit them with a cold sweep as they stepped beyond the outpost walls, the silence shocking after the chaos they'd escaped. Raven felt each grain of sand buzzing faintly beneath his feet, echoing the new surge of energy moving through him. Lyra watched him with worry and awe, sensing the transformation pulsing inside his core. He admitted he could feel the choir searching for him, but their reach was weaker now, like distant ghosts losing their grip. The sky glowed faintly with shifting colors as if reacting to the resonance rising between them. Together they followed the tug of the ancient hum stretching toward the ruins, knowing they were walking into the heart of a truth their worlds had buried for centuries. Each step felt heavier, but also right, as though destiny waited in the dust. They reached the ruins by dawn, the stones rising from the sand like the bones of a forgotten titan. Glyphs shimmered faintly along the broken walls, pulsing in sync with their footsteps. Lyra felt the ancient resonance vibrate through her chest, a soft warmth matching Raven's faint glow. He touched one of the symbols, and the structure responded instantly, sending ripples of light through the surrounding pillars. Together they stepped deeper into the ruins, feeling the energy thicken like a living memory, waiting to unfold. Raven whispered that the place felt familiar, not from memory but from instinct, as though his very design had been shaped by what lay here. Lyra realized the ruins weren't calling to them separately. They were calling to them together. The Sentinel awoke with a deep, resonant pulse that rolled through the ruins like a heartbeat spanning centuries. Light gathered in the center of the chamber, forming a shifting figure shaped from both human grace and alien strength. Its voice echoed without sound, weaving images into their minds. Two species born from one origin, split by fear, and molded into enemies by hands long turned to dust. Lyra felt her breath thicken as she watched scenes of unity shattered by those who sought power through division. Revan's eyes burned with understanding as he saw how the choir had twisted his people into instruments of war. The Sentinel showed them that their bond was the missing thread, the one connection capable of waking the truth buried beneath endless conflict. The weight of destiny settled on them both. The ruins trembled as the Sentinel completed its revelation, leaving Lyra and Revan standing at the center of a truth too vast to ignore. Lyra felt fear creeping into her chest, not of Raven, but of the path unfolding before them. Raven stepped closer, his voice steady, as he admitted that the change inside him was accelerating, shaping him into something neither alien nor human. She reached for his hand, grounding him even as the energy between them swelled. The Sentinel's chamber dimmed, urging them to choose how the truth would be carried into a world built on lies. They both understood the risk. Exposing the shared origin could unite their worlds, or ignite a war fiercer than any before. Yet as the resonance linked their hearts in a steady pulse, Neither could imagine turning back. The desert winds roared as Lyra and Revan emerged from the ruins, the sky above shifting in unnatural colors, as if reacting to their awakened bond. Raven felt his body tremble with new strength pulsing through every vein, a force he barely controlled, as the choir's distant presence clawed at what remained of their hold. Lyra watched him carefully, sensing the storm inside him growing faster than either of them could manage. She feared not his power, but the pain twisting behind his eyes. The cost of every memory returning in fragments. The Sentinel's revelation echoed through her mind. Unity demanded sacrifice, and neither world would accept the truth without a fight. As thunder cracked across a sky that had been clear minutes before, she realized their next steps might determine whether the truth healed their people or destroyed them. The choir's armada emerged above the clouds, like a shadow swallowing the horizon, their ships aligned in cold formation. Riven staggered under the psychic shock as the choir poured their command into his mind, demanding obedience, demanding the bond be severed. Lyra grabbed his shoulders, grounding him with quiet strength. As the pressure threatened to crush him, he forced himself to speak, admitting he no longer feared the choir but feared losing himself before he could stand beside her as something whole. The desert trembled as the Armada's engines roared, preparing to strike the colony and erase the truth once and for all. Lyra knew they had only moments to act. The resonance between them surged again, brighter and warmer than before, as if urging them to choose unity before the sky fell. Vera and the colony's defense council watched the Armada descend with dread, their screens filled with signatures too massive to fight. Yet Vera's gaze shifted when she saw Lyra and Revan approaching the gates, the resonance around them visible even through the storm. Soldiers raised weapons, torn between fear and confusion, while Vera struggled to understand how Lyra still walked beside the prisoner she'd been ordered to condemn. Me! Lyra stepped forward and declared the war a lie, her voice shaking but sure, revealing fragments of the truth the Sentinel had shown her. The council erupted in disbelief, but Vera's eyes narrowed with painful realization as she sensed the cracks in their history. The storm intensified, echoing the turmoil rising inside every listener. Some truths were too heavy to accept, but impossible to ignore. Raven stepped forward, forcing himself to stand tall, despite the choir's psychic assault tearing through his mind. He spoke not as a weapon, but as someone choosing his own voice for the first time, explaining how his memories were shaped by lies meant to divide their species. The colony fell silent as his words carried a raw honesty no propaganda could mimic. Lyra watched him fight each tremor, knowing every sentence cost him strength he barely had. The resonance between them shimmered visibly, crackling through the air like soft lightning, drawing gasps from the crowd. As Revan's voice wavered, Lyra reached for his hand, steadying him. The moment they touched, a pulse surged outward, revealing their shared energy in a glowing ring that rolled across the sand. Truth, once hidden, now demanded to be seen. The sky split open as the choir unleashed their full psychic command, desperate to stop the truth from spreading. Revan screamed as the force hit him, the air vibrating with deadly intensity. Lyra pulled him close, refusing to let him face the storm alone. Their bond ignited, sending waves of blue light spiraling upward, clashing with the psychic darkness descending from the Armada. The ground shook violently as the resonance stabilized between them, becoming a shield stronger than either could summon alone. Revan felt the last threads of his old code tearing away, replaced by something new and fiercely alive. Lyra whispered that he wasn't alone, and the energy around them flared with a heat that pushed the choir back. For the first time, Revan felt free, and terrified of the power that freedom unleashed. The sky churned with swirling light as Lyra and Revan stood in the glowing sand, both trembling under the weight of the final choice rising before them. The choir's armada hovered like a metal storm, while the colony braced for an impact that could erase everyone caught between fear and truth. Raven felt the last threads of the old code pulling him apart, begging him to return to the obedience he once believed was purpose. Lyra tightened her grip on his hand, steadying him with a calm that silenced the chaos inside him. The resonance pulsed brighter, shaping itself around their unity, like a heartbeat the universe had been waiting to hear again. They realized this wasn't just a stand against lies. It was a chance to end a cycle older than memory. And it began with refusing to let go. Revan stepped forward, raising his head toward the Armada as the choir pushed a psychic command that once would have crushed him instantly. This time he did not bow. With each breath, he felt their power weakening, slipping through the cracks created by his awakening. Lyra watched his stance steady, her heartbeat syncing with his as the resonance flared outward in soft, rhythmic pulses. The choir shrieked through the sky, demanding he surrender, demanding he reject the human who had freed him. But Revan spoke into the storm, declaring he chose his path, chose his identity, chose the truth binding them together. The words broke through the choir's command like sunlight piercing the storm. Lyra felt the shift in the air. The universe was listening. The colony watched in stunned silence as the resonance expanded, creating a shimmering field that left soldiers and civilians alike frozen in awe. Vera stepped forward, torn between the laws she had sworn to uphold and the realization that the world she believed in had been built on fractures and fear. Lyra met her gaze, silently pleading for understanding, and Vera felt her resolve shake. As the resonance lit the ground in glowing patterns, images flickered across the sand. The shared origin of humans and aliens. The moment the ancient bond shattered, the lies that followed. The truth washed over everyone like a forgotten memory, returning at last. The storm above calmed for a breath, as though even the sky paused to witness their world turning inside out. The choir launched a final, desperate assault, pouring every shard of their power into one last command meant to break Revan's mind completely. The impact hit like a tidal wave, but Lyra stepped into the force with him, her presence turning the pain into something they could endure together. Their resonance surged, glowing bright enough to paint the dunes in shades of gold and blue. Revan felt the last remnants of the old code snap, falling away like shattered glass, leaving him raw but true. Lyra whispered that he was free, and the universe seemed to echo her words as a trembling calm spread across the desert. The Armada faltered above them, losing formation as the choir's power crumbled. For the first time, Revan felt whole. Silence followed the collapse of the choir's influence, a silence so profound it felt like the world drawing its first real breath. The Armada drifted harmlessly as its pilots awoke from generations of conditioning, confusion replacing their once absolute purpose. The colony's people stepped forward cautiously, watching as the resonance faded into soft sparks around Lyra and Revan. He reached for her, gratitude and wonder mixing in his eyes, knowing her courage had rewritten everything he believed himself to be. Lyra felt hope fill her chest, fragile but real, as she realized they had not just broken the chains of war, they had opened the path to a future shaped by truth rather than fear. As dawn broke across the sand, their joined silhouettes marked the first moment of a new world.